Right, we're gonna call the meeting to order. Jen?
Yep. Could you all please rise? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, nation, under God.
All right, welcome everyone. We're gonna go around the room and do introductions. So to begin, I'm Missy Wharton. I'm the superintendent of the Spencer Valley School District.
Jamie Ongman, Director of Human Resources for Klamath County, representing the 3A, 4A athletic.
And Gloria Lopez, Athletic Secretary Academy, representing the Oregon Athletic.
Marshall Haskins, Senior Director of Athletics for Public representing EI.
Bill Alders, and Beaverton, representing 6A.
Kelly Foster, Assistant Executive Director of the OSA.
David Yaslanik, Executive Director of Schools, Hillsborough School District, representing activities.
Missy Smith, Assistant Executive Director of OSA.
Melissa Kennedy, Assistant Director with the Associate Director for now.
Dave Lowry, OSA Director of Media Communications.
Candy Posey, OSA Business Operations Manager.
Chris Burkhardt, Associate Director of OSA.
Scott Stanford, Chief Operating Officer at the staff for those things.
Lauren Brownrigg, an Assistant Executive Director with the OSA.
Chris Welch, Assistant Director of his office.
Staff.
Debbie Hanson, Associate Executive Director of the Oregon Officials Association, representing officials.
Bill Massey, CT Coordinator, Dallas School District, and I'm the ONC rep.
Matt Shore, the Superintendent at Power School District, and I'm the 1A.
Jordan Mendoza, Superintendent of Grant School District, 4A.
Rick Wright, Riverton School District Board Member and OSBA.
Virtual Superintendent Sisters, 3A rep.
Larry Ramirez, Director of High School Student Kaiser, 6A, 5A rep.
Jen Capissa, Superintendent, Central School District, 5A representative.
And Peter Weber, Executive Director of the OSA.
And then on Zoom, we have Gibby. You want to introduce yourself, Gibby, please?
Good morning, Gibby Reynolds. I'm the IT Systems Administrator for the OSA.
And Matt.
Matt Comby, Morrow County School District Superintendent and the 2A representative on the board.
All right, thank you. We're on to C, which we're looking for approval of the minutes. In your attachments there.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. First and second, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, on to D, Peter.
Good morning. The Executive Director's preview of the agenda. The agenda will go as published. We did in the past week or so, we did add a few more schools to the list of violations, and Kyle will address those when we get to that point at the end of the meeting, but overall, the agenda will go on as published.
Okay. E, we'll do our very best. Our whole parliamentary procedure. Now for fun stuff. E.
Yeah, it's my pleasure at this time. We wanted to take an opportunity here at the final board meeting of the year to recognize a former OSA executive board member who is retiring from being the executive director of the Oregon Athletic Officials Association, and that's Jack Follier. Jack's here this morning. You know, he's been synonymous with OAOA. Helped start it with Tom Welter, the previous executive director. Obviously a longtime official, basketball, football, high school, collegiate level, but really instrumental in forming the OAOA, working with our 3,000 plus officials around the state with our 115 local associations, and just finishing, by my count, 22 years of service to the OAOA. And so we want to take this opportunity in the public meeting to recognize Jack. We have a platform. I'll read it out. It's the Oregon School Activities Association Distinguished Service Award presented to Jack Follier in appreciation for service to the OSAA, its member schools, and high school officiating as Executive Director of the Oregon Athletic Officials Association. 22 years of service. So please join me in recognizing Jack Wood. You do. You're welcome. If you want, you're welcome to say it, you don't have to. You're-
Well, I've got about 35 minutes worth of.
Perfect.
And we've got not enough. No, I appreciate this honor, and it's been a great round. And we started this with 22 years ago. Found welfare, learned that I found out that I was retiring from my law practice and asked me to go to lunch. I knew Tom from his days here and also as athletic director, some Catholic. He offered a suggestion or an idea or a vision of creating an athletic, statewide athletic officials association, because we had the OADA and the OACA. We didn't have officials in there. We had 115 local associations that all kind of did their own thing back then without much direction. So I talked to my dad here, Clark Sanders, Canada. Clark was the first associate executive director of the OADA. And thank you for being here. I didn't know you're still around, but that's it. It's interesting to see a lot of familiar faces here, not a lot, Anne Maria, Marco Flores, and this guy here was here, this guy was here. And a lot of, met a lot of along the way. And of course, Debbie is our associate, assistant, I don't know what to call him. Associate assistant director, does all the work that I don't want to do. But big thanks to OSAA. Without the partnership wouldn't work. Big thanks to OADA and to OACA and also to Chris Welch, who's some of our liaison. So I appreciate it very much. I'll be around. Good luck. See you down the road.
Okay, we're on a new business and school request. Melissa. We don't have any. Well, that was fast. Yeah. All right.
Second.
Keep us on track. George was second. Okay, on the B, Misty Special District.
Yeah, we were able to share out all of the special districts throughout the state. We took all the feedback that came in and looked over it. No big changes from what you'll see in the packet. There were a few errors that we caught, which is great. Get that feedback. Some were just in the wrong classifications because they had moved this year. And we cleaned all that up, and I believe they are ready to go.
Any questions from Misty? Is there a motion?
I move we accept the special district as presented.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right, we're on to C, Budget Committee report with Peter and Candy.
All right, so we met with the budget committee at the end of April, on the 30th, had a great Zoom meeting with that group. Appreciate everybody who served on that, including a couple of people here in the room chaired by Misty. But wanted to update you on a few things like we normally do this time of year. So 2C1 in your packet is an update of fall and winter state championship revenue. Again, right now we're in the middle of our spring activities. We just had went through speech and solo music. Choir finished this past weekend. Band orchestra is up this week, and then starting next week, Monday, Tuesday with golf, and the end of the week with tennis and track and baseball and softball. So we're in the middle of the spring. But for the fall and the winter, you have before you have an update of the revenue, what we budgeted, what our net revenue looks like at this point. Again, in the fall, as you'll see, we were a little bit above our fall budgeted net revenue. In the winter, we were down a little bit. Remember that when we did the budget last year at this time, and approved it at the May meeting. After that meeting in September, we made an adjustment to the reimbursement formula. We felt like that was something that we could do. We added $25,000 to that. We also tweaked seasonally fall, winter, and spring after having a year in the new system. we tweaked how it went. So part of the decrease this year in the winter budgeted revenue is because we allocated a lot of that additional money into the winter in terms of expense. So we appear to be in good shape so far this year. Looking forward to the spring. Somebody said this morning it's raining this morning, so it must be time for golf and tennis district. So it sounds about right. But we're in good shape there. When the budget committee meets, one of the things that they do is they spend quite a bit of time looking at the priorities moving forward. So we went to the system last year with kind of standing priorities, and then we went to some targeted priorities for the year. So the group, when they met, came up with some standing priorities. They're listed in 2C2 in your packet. Things such as recommending that the staff remain diligent when reviewing venues and formats for state championship activities, prioritizing fiscal responsibility while endeavoring to continue providing high quality, memorable state championship experiences. That balance, we want to do everything we can to make it a great experience for the students and communities. We know there's a cost factor with that and trying to balance those things within reasonable budgets. I'm not going to read them all to you, a couple just to highlight. Recommend maintaining the association contingency fund between 6 and 8% annually, ideally closer to 8%. And with this budget and where we're at, I'm working with Candy, we're going to be closer to that 8%, which is where we want to be. And then obviously recommend that the association continue to assess staffing levels to meet the needs of the membership. That's important. So again, those are kind of standing priorities. Targeted priorities that we focused on. We started one of these last year. That was increasing the dues for associate member schools. They've been stagnant for a while. Similar to what we did with full member schools, we put together a 3-year plan to increase those over 3 years. This current year is the first year of that. So the next 2 years, those associate member school dues will increase by 10% each year. Recommend a comprehensive review of the playoff reimbursement formula. I mentioned that a few minutes ago. Last year was the first year. We made a couple of tweaks. This year is the second year. We'll sit down, review that, see if we need to make any more tweaks. In the current budget that you'll see here in a second, we budgeted at the same figure as this year, $850,000. But looking at that formula as well. So that's another targeted priority for 25-26. The third one is recommending a comprehensive review of ticket prices, all aspects related to ticket revenue, expenses, prior to when we do the budgeting process next year. So again, I mentioned we've been in the process of a 3-year plan for member school dues and fees. We haven't really adjusted ticket prices in the last couple of years. That's something we want to do kind of a deep dive on to figure out what that looks like. Our venues and personnel costs, security, things like that, just like it is for schools, continues to rise. So that's an area that we'll need to look at. And talking with the budget committee, they have some ideas of some different things we can bring back to them to show them different options if there was to be some type of change in the ticket prices. And then finally, recommend continued consideration of emerging activities, considerations to be given how any emerging activity can be accessed by the entire membership, and the financial considerations related to such new programming opportunities for both schools and the association. So those are the targeted priorities for 25-26. Misty or Kurt or others who were in on that, you want to weigh in or have anything, but that's where we're at for the recommendations. Any thoughts?
Agree.
Summarize that pretty well.
Yeah, you capture it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I think when we sit down in July with the board at the summer workshop, we can dive into some of these things a little bit deeper. Again, it's part of the recommendations from the budget committee. There's no action needed on those right now, but we'll have some additional information for the board at that time. The action items that we need you to look at and vote on today are 2C3 and 2C4. Candy, do you want to talk about 2C3, the mileage?
Sure. So the mileage rate for this year, 24-25 was at 67 cents per mile. That's the IRS mileage rate. It has increased now to 70 cents per mile in 25-26. So that's what we had budgeted for. That is 100% of the current rate for our officials. any staff using their personal vehicles, which doesn't happen very often. And then we take 70% of that current rate, which will now be 49 cents per mile for all of our executive board, assembly, all of our community clinics and things like that, that we reimburse mileage for. So that's our proposed mileage rate for 25, 26.
This is a nice opportunity, with Candy presenting that to, publicly thank Candy for putting all the information together for the budget committee. Those of you in your districts understand what that looks like, trying to pull that together for your district. She's pulling this together for everything that we do here, all the championships and obviously the operations side. So big thank you to Candy for the work that you do. So we have that as
You wanna
an action item.
Do that and then go to the budget?
That would be great
Okay.
when we do that.
So move as presented.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
So that takes care of the mileage reimbursement rate. And then 2C4 is the budget. So you see there listed, again, because we've gone through a Zoom meeting, we had about a 2-hour Zoom meeting with the committee. We don't actually have the physical signatures, but we did in the chat, people put in that they agreed with the budget. So we have that on file, but this is the proposed budget for 25-26, taking into account again, all the income from activities, operations, etc. And then the expenses, again, operations, activities flowing out. So we'd be looking for approval of the association budget as well.
And contingency healthy at 8%.
The contingency, again, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I think we were sitting at about 6.5% last year, and some adjustments that we made and being able to shift some things around, that we would be right at 8% looking into this 25-26 school year.
That's great.
Move to approve.
Nope.
That we approve the association budget for the 25-26 school year.
I'll second the Hall of Famer.
Okay, discussion. There you go.
Very
No
good.
discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Good.
Aye, opposed. All right, thank you, budget committee members, and thank you, Candy and OSA staff. A lot of work to put all that together. Okay, we are on to Kyle for adoption calendar.
Yep, 2D in your packet is the association calendar for 25-26. We're looking for a motion and a second to approve it. Right now, everything's structured with their contracts is listed there in the far right column or locations. Obviously, that can change, something can happen, but right now, those are the dates and those locations are planning on for next year. So any questions happening to those, now we need a motion to approve.
Questions for Kyle?
And if you remember that this current year was a year where the calendar jumped. It jumped kind of as late as we're gonna go, and then we start inching backwards. So that is in effect next year as well.
And track will be after Memorial Day again.
Okay, if there's no questions, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? On to E, Pete and Kyle.
So 2E in your packet, this is typically the meeting when we would approve the or appoint the classification and districting committee. Again, that group will start their process at the end of August and run into December, where they will come before the board and the delegate assembly in December with their final recommendations for a vote. So, you know, over the last few weeks or so, at the AD conference, talking to various people over the last month or two, had some interest in this group, as we typically have. We reached out to a few people, trying to put the puzzle together of making sure we have representation, obviously, to mirror the executive board, match each classification around the state geographically, et cetera, all those things that are priorities for us. So before you in 2E, you have listed our proposal for the committee, including, just as we go through here, Eton Udasanana from Tiger Tualatin, Shay James from North Clackamas, James Rise from Cascade, Randy Vigiano from Ridgeview, Heidi Sight from Umatilla, Bill Croson from Monroe, Mike Mills from Imbler, Jacob Pence from Banks, Paul Isom from Napa, Josh Groding from Sutherland, Michelle Napier from Grants Pass, Lonnie Hawkins from LaSalle, Greg Mulkey from the South Coast, Craig Albright, a school board member, in Dayton. And also our diversity, equity, inclusion rep, which would be Marshall Haskins. So we'd be looking for approval from the board for that committee. We'll start the process of getting that work underway.
Move to approve.
Discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
The second piece of that, along with the committee, is the charge of the committee. So also at the end of 2E, you have from the handbook 9.2, which is listed the C and D committee with the different things. They're generic charge, the composition, the term, et cetera, number of meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And there's also typically an additional charge or 2 or 3 that the board would include. And what we have here for you to review and vote on as an additional charge to the things that they will look at is consider investigate and report regarding the feasibility and advisability of alignments that reduce travel if possible. That's something we heard quite a bit, both at the delegate assembly meeting and then again at the Oregon Athletic Directors Association conference, with the situation that many of our school districts find themselves in financially, that travel will be significant and important. So alignments that reduce travel when possible. Investigate and report regarding the feasibility and advisability of reducing the number of classifications. That's something we heard quite a bit about, particularly from our larger classifications, about the idea of 5 classes. What does that look like? Probably something we would look at anyways, but something that certainly came up through those conversations and that input and feedback. And then C, adjusting classification cutoff points. Again, something that group traditionally looks at, but as we hear about changing school enrollments and the impact that can have, our cutoff points will need to be examined and perhaps adjusted. So those are the 3 that we have as an additional charge. I have no doubt that there will be plenty of other topics that this group will be looking at and asked to look at as they go through their process. But wanted to put this before you for review and adoption for the charge for the classification. And happy to try and answer any questions.
questions? I think we're on to F then,
Can we let's get approval of that. If we could,
of the charge.
of the charge.
Okay. Let's vote on the charge. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve. Charge of committee.
Second. Discussion. In favor? Opposed? All right. Now,
So F, 2F in your packet is a list of the roster for the current executive board. We have 3 members who have been appointed that need to be reappointed. Their first 3-year term is expiring here with this school year, and so they need to be reappointed. So the 3 are Misty Warden as our 2A, 1A at-large member, Marshall Haskins as our diversity, equity, and inclusion advisory committee member, and then Debbie Hansen as our Oregon Athletic Officials Association representative. So we would be looking for a motion to reappoint those 3 for the second 3-year term that they're allowed under the Constitution.
Second.
right, discussion?
I just have one little edit as well. It's the Hood River County School District, not the Hood River School District, which is important. Thank you.
Noted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, any discussion? those in favor? Opposed?
I guess we should have asked the three of you.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, can't go out today, so there you go.
Okay, we're on to G. We need to elect vice president for the 25-26 school year. Any
I would nominate Jamie Augman.
Second.
other nomination? Okay, discussion. You guys are talking every day. All right, all those in favor of Jamie, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Upstage.
Classification. Congratulations. Okay, on the back, we have old business, Kyle.
Three A in the packet is the review of the topic items from the delegate assembly meeting that they had there this morning. Just to get the overall, 30,000 foot view of each. We'll talk about bridging activities in the first one, really focused on the interest of schools with their, budgets kind of coming up. Time and energy kind of coming into that was kind of all over the board, but right now, I'm not super interested in adding sports or activities to the association. I mentioned boys volleyball, girls play football, that's right behind there. And if one's going forward, so I think the initial conversation that will be had, as of right now, that's where to see adding something else. Item number 2 is about the classification machine committee. I talked about what work they like to focus on. Really, it's about kind of that same type of conversation of finances. Is a way to look at hybrid leagues. Is a way to minimize travel. Is a way to increase the league size. Those types of things will be reviewed by the classification committee as we just said with the 3 additional charges. The third one was the football ad hoc committee in regards to looking at their alignment of 2 years. We're looking at it at every other year or every year in regards to football, and they're moving schools up and down. Most are in favor of a 2-year alignment, but know that there's probably going to be some movement annually. And the fourth one is the championship special task force. There's 2 more to say. Championship special task force, as they start to kind of go through their work, kind of in their work, I should say, they're kind of focusing on a concept regarding a range to qualify between 30 and 40%, with a low end of 25% and a high end of 45% to a state championship. Overall, very supportive of that notion in regard to getting the best people there. It's a good target and to the state championships and help guide that conversation for the state championship committee that'll be coming up after the classification committee, which will start next year, but at the start of this next school year. And then finally, transfer and eligibility task force, a number of questions inside that. Really, at the end of the day, they do want to become more strict in regards to transfers. They want to have more documentation. That committee actually met a little while ago last week. Lauren will update you here in a minute. But overall, they feel like the work of that committee is worthwhile and more documentation we need to move on and find ways to transfer, try to make transferring not easy to be had or for around the state. So that was a quick overview of a lot of information. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Questions for Kyle?
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
On to B, board member concerns or discussion. Board members have any concerns or discussion? No?
Yeah, one thing I just want to honor the work that the staff does, making sure that OSWA continues to stay student-centric, focused on meeting the needs of our kids and allowing them to have access to all of our athletics.
All right, we're on to reports. Like Chris. Oh, I can't read. Rob. Sorry.
We're gonna double team it anyway.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having us again. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss a few things that are on our docket with our coach association. On April 10th, we had our spring OACA executive board of directors meeting. We met with our winter sports chairs at that meeting, so we had representation from basketball, swimming, wrestling, dance, and cheer. It was a very good meeting. Got a lot of great input from those 5 different groups of sports chairs as we went through our agenda. And you'll be hearing some of this stuff, and a lot of the stuff that we discussed will kind of be going forward to the state championship committee next year, rather than come through you initially. So we're excited about those things. Then right after that, we went over to Sun River, and I need to compliment Hoodie and Shelley Moore and Anna Marie for an outstanding OADA workshop conference over there. Chris and I talk all the time about we don't know how to get any better. And every year it seems to get a little better. The networking that goes over there, just the interaction between athletic directors and the OAOA and the OACA and the OSAA is just excellent. Professional development opportunities are good, and it's just so much fun to recognize athletic directors for so many different recognition awards and all. Very well deserved in each one and all. So I just want to once again just say thank you to the OADA, including us in that activity. Right after that, I flew out to Waco, Texas, and represented the 10 Northwest states at the AFCA conference, which is American Football Coaches Association there in Waco. We met with Coach Bowl, who's their executive director, for a day of meeting. And it was primarily how we can coordinate the high school concerns we have in recruiting, transfers, NIL in many states, with the college, what the college are doing to try and get a little bit of control of the transfer portal and the NIL that is just ruining the college athletic scenes. But they're trying to initially do some stuff through lobbying with the federal government, looking at how it's so unrestricted right now with agents and all, and how we can get control of that. And Coach Bowl is very excited about how he can tie those things into the high school levels, primarily with maybe some stuff with agents and get control there. I was talking earlier, we don't see it as much here in the state as it's starting to trickle down, but there's a school on the East Coast that has a budget of $3.3 million for their NIL. The quarterback, a 17-year-old kid gets paid $1.3 million. And so it's coming. And we just want to make sure we get control of it as soon as we can. And that was an excellent meeting. What we did is Coach Bull contacted me a year ago when he got the job and said, how do we get the high school back involved with the colleges and work together? And so we got 5 different association directors from around the nation that I've worked with as a leadership team. We meet twice a year, and I'm excited about that opportunity. We're really excited about our awards banquet. I'm going to turn it over to Chris. You guys have a handout that we passed out, and Chris will kind of lead it as we go.
Yeah, as Rob said, we're so excited for our banquet. It's coming up at the end of the month on May 31st at the club level, Hudson Stadium. You'll look at the handout that Rob handed out and notice that there's 2 coaches that we're honoring that are in their 60th year of coaching, which is phenomenal. 6 are at 55, 4 are at 50, and 9 at 45 years, including Dave Hood here. And so for 45 years, Dave's been coaching. You must have started when you were 12 or 13. But we're very proud to honor them. And that is just coaches that are members of our OACA. So there might be more than that out there that aren't members. If you'll look at the bottom of that, we have 3 officials, Alicia, Patrick, and Henry, that have many, many years of experience. And we're happy to honor them. We think it's quite the special award that coaches are honoring officials at this. We think that's pretty special. The Rob Younger Power of Influence Award winner is Mike Forrester from North Bend for all the great things he's done. Dave Johnson Contributor Awards Terry Summerfield, many years of being our certification person for all of our stuff that he does. And the Marv Heater Distinguished Service Award goes to Pat Collier. Happy to honor him. If you look at the back of this, it's our scholarship winners. Of the 13 scholarships we're giving out, totals $25,500 this year to our 25 graduates, our 2025 graduates. OACA scholarship history puts us at over 360,000 that we've given out in scholarships over the years. So this is a very fun and inspiring evening, and we're happy to honor so many different coaches. And of the Coach of the Year awards, that is all sports and all classifications. So there's an awful lot of coaches that were honored at this. Thank you very much.
We're 3 weeks out, and I was talking to Melissa this morning. We have over 300 coaches that have confirmed they're going to be at the banquet. So we're going to expect probably 360 or 380 coaches and family members at that banquet. So we're excited about that. Last thing we have is we have a action item with our volleyball proposal. You heard this back in February. I think it's on page 29 of your handouts. What this does is our small classification volleyball people really need this to make sure that they have enough people to be able to participate both in the JV and the varsity. Really appreciate all the work Missy's done on this and Peter's involvement too, as we've kind of adapted through some stuff. You'll see what we're asking is that the present policy right now is 1 set in addition to 1 match, as whether it's practice participation per day. What our volleyball coaches would like to see that go is to 6 sets. It deals a little bit with the 3 out of 5 concept that we've gone to a few years ago. It really helps. Like I said, initially our small classifications have some problems with player numbers. Not so much at the 5A, 6A, but for consistency, we think it's important that we make it a 1A through 6A policy so that we don't have 2 different policies in place. Missy, anything you want to add? Because you were really instrumental in helping us with this.
No, I think if we split it up, that was the initial proposal. It would have taken us backwards a little bit with 5A, 6A, because it would have been, 6 versus they could go to 5 sets in a match plus 1, right? So the whole idea is just to get us to that point where it's consistent. We couldn't just do 1A through 4A. It just didn't seem right. So
We agree with that. And so, any questions concerning the proposal?
I just want to say a big thank you to Jennifer Teeter. She was instrumental in working with Missy.
Yeah.
And kind of
Well, she would have been here other than she's in Hawaii, so I don't feel too bad.
So to Rob's point, it's 4A1 in your packet. The proposal to amend participation limitations for volleyball as was stated. At the change of language to say the students are not competing with 6 total sets per day at different levels. Again, there's some other things to be cleaned up as long as they're in there anyways.
Question, process type question. I know that Missy was working on it and just said, Jen Teeter. You got feedback from coaches, you got feedback from athletic directors, you got feedback from the whole group, and we don't have to worry about people being upset, and we didn't really listen to them or hear everybody's perspective.
no, George, one of the big issues is a lot of times the lower, the smaller classifications, the lower level, we're getting 1 set or 2 because they couldn't field it. So then your kids are driving on a bus for 3 hours and playing 1 set of volleyball, and then that's all they could play because they need those girls to go play in the varsity set. So, or the varsity match. So that was the big issue, was how do we make sure that those, those sub-varsity level teams were getting to participate.
Right.
And I think that was the key to this. So,
It was actually a really good conversation at the Coaches Association meeting. We also, Kelly and I talked with the Sports Medicine Advisory as well. No issue from their perspective of playing 6 sets, because right now, again, if you played the varsity match first and it went 5, then you can play 1 set in the JV match. That was second. So that's not an issue. Really, it was more to Missy's point, just trying to address that issue that some of our schools are facing, allowing kids opportunities to participate. But it was very well supported.
Yeah. And we ran a survey, as you can see in there. There's a lot of pie charts.
Other questions? If not, just entertain a motion.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. On to B. Big.
Good morning, everyone. And we did, just to recap our state conference, we had record attendance. Seems like we continue with records. We have record membership and now we have record attendance. So those are good things. Some of the highlights, We had NIAAA Associate Executive Director Becky Moran attended, presented. We had a keynote from the New York Times bestselling author Lauren Fleischman. We inducted our 15th OADA Hall of Fame class. We honored sort of new ADs with some social functions and mentoring things. We gave a record $7,000 OADA scholarships. Usually we give a boy and a girl, and it's less than that. So we've been very successful with our golf tournament, raising some funds for that. We presented 8 leadership training courses, which were very well attended. We had 14 ADs become certified during the conference. Thanks to our LTI coordinator, Tim Sam, for putting that all together. 20 different workshops. Just had a really great amount of professional development. So that was really good. We had a number of ADs honored. The ADs of the year this year were Annette Muller from Wallowa High School, Ryan Tompkins from Clatskanie, Gary Buzinski from Willamina, 4A was Darren Tryock from Staten High School, 5A Mike Hartman from Summit High School, and the 6A was Kate Hartman from Sherwood High School. We had the NIAAA State Award Merit to Kevin Moffett from Kennedy. The Proactive Leadership Leader of Significance Award went to Pete Lukic and Tom Bent for their work with the Oregon Ambassador Program. Our Bruce D. Whitehead Distinguished Service nominee for the NIAAA was Steve Wallow from C.S. Lewis Academy. Our NFHS Citation Award nominee was the upcoming Hall of Famer, Maria Lopez. Our OADA Partnership Award went to Derek Newman from Riverdale. It's really fun to watch some of these younger ADs step up and be mentored by some of our experienced ADs. They're taking on more responsibility, and that's really gratifying. Our Cindy Simmons Leadership Award, we had 2 people that qualified for that, or a bunch of people qualified, were nominated, and 2 were selected. Brandon Standridge from Cresswell, who's now going to be at
North
Bend. And then Ryan McCurvin from McMinnville, and our Joe Rotramo Lifetime Service Award was Gary Hall from Western Christian. So that was really good. Conference was great. We had speaking of pie charts, oh my God. In your packet are a ton of them. You've talked about those, and I won't belabor those, but there were some themes in there for sure. So if there are any questions about that, certainly we can go back and reassess things. But I think the ADs are kind of like you all. They're sensing some, I don't want to say dark days ahead, but some lean days ahead, and some of their responses reflected that. And then there were some mixed things, things about if you did have boys volleyball, where do you place it? And that was mixed, but definitely some concerns coming up. And so, yeah, any questions? I'm happy to entertain them, especially regarding those classification questions, complex questions. Anything specific you want me to address?
No, I guess a couple things from my perspective, and board members can weigh in too. First, Dave, thank you for your work. I think you talk about OADA continuing to set records and getting more people involved. I think a lot of that comes from your work that you do and the approach that you have. I know in talking with your board members and other ADs, they feel wanted, they feel like their opinions are valued, and that's important. So kudos to you for the work that goes there. And kind of in conjunction with that, really appreciate the work in the collaboration on the classification questions, that working with Rob and Chris and our staff and you in advance. And this is good feedback. It's stuff that we're going to be able to use. We've already talked about some of it with the board. We talked about things like classification, emerging activities, football ad hoc. It's important to get that feedback, and hopefully the ADs felt that way at the meeting. They had that opportunity. It doesn't mean that we're always going to 100% agree on everything that comes forth, but I think that conversation, again, is a testament to the work that you and your board are putting in. So really appreciate that. We'll dive into that a little bit further as some of these committees get going, classification, districting, and otherwise, some of the task forces continue on.
Thanks, Dave. Looks like we're on to Jack and Debbie for athletics for Steve.
It's to me, that he just ran out.
Did she? Oh, wonder. Jack's you.
Just a couple of quick things, I forgot to mention that we're going through a process with Debbie leading to find my success. We have 8 candidates in the process of the state. Well, if you apply, that means you got bad judgment, so we really don't have any candidates. I'm serious, we've got 8 candidates from all the state, good ones, go through a process and have our selection on board within the month. And I'll be around to help with transition, et cetera. Secondly, recruiting, I always like to talk about recruiting. We're doing better. Last couple of years, it's been an 8 to 9% increase. Well, number of people, you probably noticed that scheduling, particularly coming out of the COVID years. We're not out of the woods yet. Sure like to see another 10 to 15% total. We struggle a lot of small communities. Obviously, it's smaller populations, but those are I'm on. Thank you. Trailblazers.
Thanks, Jack.
Sorry.
When Debbie comes back, she doesn't reach out to that.
Okay.
But let's go to E, sports medicine.
That's kind of a tough act to follow.
I'm gonna get up again.
I'm gonna call you. You can call me. Hold on to Philadelphia Eagles. In the 3rd round. So Kelly and I will give you a little bit of update on sports medicine advisory. I'll talk about a couple of things and let Kelly fill in. So met with them again at the end of April. April's a big month for meetings for us as we're kind of in between championships. So a couple of things legislation wise, there's 2 bills, House Bill 2529 and House Bill 3007. 2529 looks at requirements for AEDs and also certification for coaches. And so we talked about this at the delegate assembly. We talked about it at the OADA as well, but it's looking like this is likely to pass. We've already made some arrangements with the NFHS Foundation, also with the David Heller Foundation about trying to acquire access for either free or reduced cost AEDs for schools. And so we've seen some information out about that. 3007 would require brain injury forms really tied to immediate temporary academic accommodations for students. And so there'll be a form that the state will come out with that schools will need to have in place to use when they have a student that's been diagnosed with concussion. Again, really more on the academic piece of it and adjustments, accommodations, and the timeliness of those decisions. Again, we're expecting that to pass as well. So we provide more information to schools as we move forward. Another piece that we talked about, and actually subsequently had a meeting with Dave Hood and DEQ regarding AQI and information about the purple air monitors versus the DEQ monitors, and really interesting information coming out of that. So we're looking at getting back together with those reps from DEQ, kind of overlaying where they have full-fledged DEQ monitors in the state with where our schools are located, seeing where the gaps are, and then how can we help fill the gaps and help support schools in the work that they do. So that'll be ongoing. We'll probably have some more to report in this July when we get together and meet at that point. Kelly, I'm going to turn it back over to you for a couple other things.
Yeah, the couple things the committee wanted us to review is getting a little bit of guidance for pregnancy participation. We've had a few more out over the years, so just to put a statement out for our schools with some guidance for athletes. And then again, the wrestling weight monitoring program, this committee, I spoke to them as well about potential updates to that process and that program that we use. So reaching out to coaches to gather some more information and some other states to get some different adjustments that we might look at and bring to both the sports medicine group and this board in the future. And then also talked about mental wellness course and making a concerted effort out of this office from the OSA to make sure that we're really communicating those resources. There's a new course that came out from the NFHS. We talked about it with Delegate Assembly and just getting those resources for our schools so that we continue emphasizing that importance.
And then I guess the final thing on that we have been talking about, and Kelly and I have been working with KSI, the Corey Stringer Institute, and Team Up for Sports Safety. They go around the country and meet with different state associations to review processes and protocols they have in place. In each state, we have a meeting set for October. Then we'll be including a number of people from our Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, working with EMS people in the state, et cetera, to bring them together for kind of a day-long meeting. Really kind of a check of, hey, where are things at? Where are priorities? Where do we need to be at moving forward? So we've been working with them on putting that together as well. So that's kind of our update for Sports Medicine Advisory. Any questions?
And Debbie, we can bounce back to you. Jack gave us a few updates, but you weren't in the room and we went over the officials.
Sorry, that was a phone call I've been waiting for 8 weeks.
Oh,
I couldn't really want to let it go. So I don't know, did you say anything about the process, where we're at with the process?
Yeah.
I don't want to repeat what was already said. I'll just pass and thank you again. I do want to say. Anyway, I just want to, oh, he's probably at the meeting. I just want to thank the OADA for the opportunity to speak at their conference. That was really great experience.
We figured you went outside and used your call to call Jack.
Yeah.
Kelly.
Yeah, this was our final meeting with our DEI committee. Really a big part of the discussion with that group was reviewing a kind of framework for a response plan when a bias incident occurs within a school, and kind of creating a checklist, a flow of where the responsibility lies and kind of the steps you want to take and what's covered by, within your building, what might be an OSAA policy and who are the players that are involved with that, and then creating kind of a checklist for our schools so that we have a more streamlined process of response that also takes into consideration restoration and like trauma-informed practices as well. That
We're also working with COSA on that too, to partner on that. We have some things in place, and I think it's just a way to try and improve the things we have in place and make sure the community.
and bringing it all into one
there,
spot.
right.
So that
Questions?
Maybe just a comment, but once we get it pretty close, at the COSA and local state Oregon Association School Executive piece to that besides course levy. If the superintendents fall in line very well, they'll support their principals at their building level and anything on up that needs to happen. Especially if it's aligned to the policies like every student belongs.
Yeah, and that's what we're working with Christy Perry on that. Contact with some different superintendents as have we to try and figure out. I think the plan would be to work on and bring back to you in July. A pretty cohesive plan for you to put your eyes on it and be able to roll it out of that and work up in August. Really have that in place again to help support schools, certainly to support communities as well.
Great. Kyle, and the LA Championship Professional.
yeah, so you pretty much kind of gave a description already about their work. They're coming forward with pretty much a proposal, but a recommendation to have a range between 30 and 40% and a low end of 25 and high end of 45 out participation and qualification to state championships. We already went through the Doug Assembly caucus discussion, and as you can see, the OADA, they're also in favor of the range as well. So we will really add the question for you, if there's any other work that you want to provide, or we want them to do, I should say, before you come back with actual recommendations from that group. Is there any work that you want them to do, or other things you want them to look at? As of right now, they're supporting the range, and it looks like both the association, as well as the athletic director's support as well. Peter, did I miss anything on that? Or were we
No, I
moving
think,
forward?
again, I think, you know, the groups have been working throughout this year. If you recall, you formed it after the last state championship committee, again, to try and provide kind of that 30,000 foot view, overarching of where do we want to be from a qualification percentage standpoint. Their opinion very clearly was that they felt like in general, too many individuals and teams are making the playoffs. It's watering it down in their eyes. And so been working with them, they put out some updates, really focused on what Kyle mentioned here. What they see as the optimal qualification percentage range for team sports, for individual sports activities. And it's listed here. Remember that I think the goal of the task force was to have that overarching range. This is not the group that's going to figure out how we get there. That's the state championship committee. So really this is coming to the board. You know, again, as Kyle said, if there's things that you want them to reconsider, if there's things you want to look at, we can talk more about it in July in depth, but this will result in, again, if everything stayed the same, we know we're going into classification and districting and changes, but if everything stayed the same, this would result in some changes. In some cases, some significant changes. There'd be a couple of activities that would need to be added to in order to reach that. And there would be plenty of activities that would be reduced by some amount in order to fall within that range. Obviously, that has far-reaching impacts on the association as a whole. But again, as Kyle said, supported at the delegate assembly, supported at the OADA. That's where we're at.
I was just gonna add that flexibility piece, something that they encouraged us to also look at was, kind of like you guys are familiar with. And we adopt the qualification for like baseball and softball because it's one of those sports that can be kind of volatile, especially the lower classification. And so they really expressed to us that they were interested in having that flexible outlook throughout the school year and maybe adjusting some of the qualifications based on once we actually get firm numbers. And it, you know, it might not work in a team sport that's bracketed, but looking at number of qualifiers in like an individual, when we actually see how many cross-country teams are running or how many golf teams are running or participating, and then using that for numbers of qualifying.
Just to add to what I recall, at least from the 4A discussion, is if we have 29 schools in the 4A, and if you're going to do 16 for playoff, that's 32, so they'll be above the 50% mark in having that flexibility for.
Well, again, I think that's part of the discussion of this task force is that they don't want to be above the 50% mark.
Do you
So
mean
if you
like
end up with a classification
a
of,
bracket number or?
Yeah, well, that bracket would be, so anyway, if it's 14, then that would be maybe close to that 45.
right? I think that's where this group is that even taking a 16 team bracket potentially and saying that's too many. 14, given the size of the classification and the number of schools that are offering activity, 14 fits within the range, then their recommendation is 14. So now again, I don't think they're recommending let's have brackets of 9 or things like that, but again, just looking at there would be some potential changes. That's where the range comes in. And they wanted it to be a range so there is some flexibility. But they didn't want it to be where it is now, where we have some championships where 60% of the schools are getting in. They don't think that's the right way to approach it. And it doesn't appear that the ADs or delegate assembly believe that either. Marshall.
Well, I was, I guess I wonder range. So I say a low end of 25 and 30 to 40. Those are three drastically different numbers. So is there, I guess, data somewhere, other associations where they've identified threshold as being 35%? That's what we're targeting, or are we just kind of open-ended to what we kind of feel what might be best?
Well, I think we shared a lot of data with this group. One of the things we shared with is what we're currently doing. So where we currently have every activity, every sport, the percentages, et cetera, team brackets, individual sports and activities. and shared where we're at. In most cases, we're right there. But there are some that are out of whack. And I think the thought was coming out of last state championship committee, provide some bumpers around, we want to be within this range. And that's why they have it as a range, because they know that it's going to be a little bit different. With the idea being that then when the board convenes the state championship committee, you know, in November, December this year, as we finish classification and districting, that part of the charge to that group, again, if you all support this, would be find a way to get it in this range.
How do you feel about any potential lost revenue? How much have you discussed that?
Again, we've talked about as a staff, most of the things are within the range. There will be lost revenue, there'll be lost expenses too. Again, if you're looking, for example, you brought up about a bracket at, say, a basketball tournament that has 16 teams in the first round. Well, if it went to 14 to fit in the range, that's 2 games in the first round. The final site remains the same, where a lot of the revenue comes in. So, you know, if you look at I mean, this was a great group that talked about a lot of different things. And again, I think sometimes people will look at this and say, oh, this is just cutting opportunity, things like that. I really don't think that's how this group was looking at it. I think as you look here, they want to reinforce the idea that state championships are just that, it's a championship. They want it to be an honor for people to be there, not like, oh yeah, I got in. No, I qualified for this. I'm a part of it. They want to increase the competitiveness of state championship events, some of the blowouts and things that we've seen. Honestly, they wanted to look at ways to decrease travel expenses for schools. We heard that especially from our bigger schools, where you have schools like in the 6A, for example, that are coming in as the 31st or 32nd team, traveling 5.5 hours to go get thumped in a game. That makes sense. They're missing school, there's added cost. Again, there's opportunities and experiences for kids. So trying to weigh those things, but those are the things they talked about as they looked at it. I think they really felt like they are about participation opportunities, and really that's a regular season piece. The participation opportunities are in schools saying we're going to have varsity, JV, freshman, JV2 if we have enough kids and we can support it and those types of things. It shouldn't be an all-comers meet for the state team. That was where the conversation. Questions?
Thank you.
Can we put a pause on that? Because I think we have ties here.
Yeah, we have both our.
And he has to get back to figure out tenants district and range. So.
I in the graduated from high school, and we discussed earlier, in fact, you'll see the information, both from the association, about what happened, we described that earlier today, about the video that we saw, and ties here to be part of that mandatory appearance that comes with an official and a coach having to contact, also appealing at the King's property to the board to support that, and that in your packet is 5A16.
17.
Was that
17?
17, I apologize. So, yeah, if any questions about that, let's turn over to the tie, and you describe what happened that day as well as what the school did afterwards.
You want me to walk back and kind of give a narrative of?
Yeah. It can be a high level.
Yeah, so JV game, we had 6 games on campus that night, in 2 gyms. JV game was late in the game, late third, early fourth quarter territory. We had our JV head coach had been, he had got the technical and been thrown out. Referees called the game off, and then as the referees were leaving, they have to walk down this other hallway where they kind of interact with some of the players on their way through. One of the players said something back to the official. The official said something that player later reported was the official cursed at him. The official said he did not do that, but that player then reported to our coaches. The head JV coach and the assistant JV coach was volunteer. And so then this official had grabbed his stuff out of the locker room, was walking out to the main gym to officiate
the varsity game, which was coming up next. And then these coaches went into the main gym to confront him. As they get in there, the volunteer JV assistant, pretty heated, comes in and I think it was the lead official steps in between. It seemed like a very veteran move to step in between the two. And the JV assistant made contact with him, trying to get through to the official who had just worked the JV. That's kind of the. That was close to you.
You want to talk about this, the actions that the school has taken
Yeah.
since then?
Thank you, yeah. Since then, the school has. We suspended both coaches immediately. We wound up suspending the JV head coach who didn't make contact but had been thrown out. And went back in. We suspended him for an additional game, so 2 games for him. And then the coach who made contact, the volunteer, was suspended until we could get with film and talk with Missy and all of these things. And we wound up releasing him shortly after without him coaching another game. And then we've gotten with our coaching staff, we've had multiple discussions, head coaches had discussions, they've come together to talk about how they want to be represented. By their staff and how they want to appear to their student athletes as well.
So were you the only administrator on duty and you're with 2 whole 6 games going on? Were there any other administrative support for you?
Yes, because I'm in our building, I'm a TOSA. And so we had another administrator who was there, but I wound up being one who responded on the court to take him on.
And your coaches, the coaches that went back in, didn't think about reaching out to you for you to be the one to go in and talk to them versus about what incident happened with the students versus them going in and taking it on themselves?
We had that discussion. And the volunteer assistant said, well, he's going to stand up for his kids. And I tried to lay it out that that's not how we do it. We handle these later. We take care of this kind of stuff through the officials association, talk back to to all of our folks there to try to figure out what could have happened. And I'm not sure how deep that impacted conversation.
You said this to him prior?
No, I didn't get a chance to even see him until we walked him out after he had come in to make contact with the official. I had said, this is not the route.
Just back to prior, is there anything where the coaches know if you're kicked out of the game or if you're, if the official has removed you from the game, not to come back? Do they know not to come back?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the stuff we go over in the preseason meeting. At the same time, that meeting is extensive. And so I could imagine if you've never been in that position, maybe you would not know that, I guess. I just would assume if I've been thrown out of the game, I would leave. Like, it just seems like kind of a basic protocol.
When a coach is thrown out, what happens? They just ejected and official tells them you have to leave the floor, or what role do you play when a coach is ejected?
Well, I'll say in my few years, I've had a number of ejections, many of them have been kids who've been involved, and so it's a little bit different scenario. With a coach being ejected, normally I would go in and I would walk him out, and I would take him back to the coach's locker room or take him somewhere and just kind of chat about what happened. But in this one, because of the way that traffic pattern happened, and it was pretty quick on the film, there wasn't a great chance to even have anybody even let me know as I was
If this was, talking me through a volunteer, very easy to let volunteer coaches go. If this is a paid coach, what is your route? What is your reaction to a paid coach, even a paid coach that's on staff?
It'd be the same route.
You dismiss the same that.
I mean, I would want to look through HR to make sure we're following everything the way we should. Because even with this, they wanted to take some, different steps that they needed to take that I was privy to ahead of time. But, with contact with an official, I think that would be, or at least out for the year, and we could, reapply to look at something later, but that's not acceptable route.
Any other questions for?
How are you guys gonna grow from this or learn from this? What are your thoughts for not letting this repeat?
Well, I've thought a ton about that as a concept on. What do we do to, in a sense, it's hard to legislate behavior, right? It's hard to look at that and say. We need to do these things to make sure these coaches don't put themselves in that position. But I think what we will do is we'll have more discussions with. Kind of how do we want our kids to see us? Right, I think if we can center it around how do we want our kids to see these adults who are role models, ideally. Then we can kind of have a different discussion than. Please don't make contact with an official. Right, that if we can have it be more kid-centered, I would hope that would be more impactful. And I know our varsity head coach has already kind of started going that route. He and I have talked more hours than we'd like to admit about this. And kind of what can we do to try to make it more impactful, make it more kid-centered.
I have a question going back to the prior situation as well. When you have those pre-season meetings, are those with head coaches and the information trickles down to the other coaches, or is it all coaches together in one space?
We ask that all coaches come in, but also I will say it's tougher to get volunteers to be there when we have these meetings in the fall, and then we're hoping that it does, and especially if it's someone who hasn't been hired yet, right, or hasn't volunteered yet, or says, well, I'm on vacation, there's a volunteer, right?
So I guess one thing I would just think through is when you do have the 6 games, that perhaps we should have someone else be in the other gym, kind of the person in charge of in that gym, but clearly a whole lot of things could happen. I just a suggestion. Just a thing.
I appreciate it, yeah.
Any questions or comments?
Well, I'll just say this also, there are some things that happen they happen and then you figure out what to do in the future. I mean, there are some things that you as an adult would understand you're kicked out, you're kicked out, they will follow that. I would say try to legislate that as much as possible and don't assume that they know. I would speak for myself, we do trainings. This year we can get that in next year because we just think they know. We just can't do.
Anything else from the board? You want to act on this now, or you want to wait until we're?
And I think it's important to act if we can on this one, just because they are also appealing so excited with the appeal form, and you guys also in your packet. That's a documentation that they're in.
And again, to be clear, $500 fine for the coach coming back when we're supposed to be in the facility and forfeiture of the game. That's already been done, the forfeiture. That's not what you're looking at appealing. The $1,500 fine for physical contact with an official by a coach is what's on the table. So thoughts or comments from the board and some type of that.
One more thought for me on contact. Has there ever been a time where we've said it's okay to contact an official and we're not going to impose a fine?
Never been a situation where I think we said we're not going to impose any fine. We've had varying levels of contact. We've had contact where somebody touches the elbow of an official. We've had contact where somebody throws a punch at an official. Full extension. There's been different levels that have been looked at, but it's never been no fine at all. Carry about your business.
And back to that, even the way you described it, this is a what fine. This is a what fine. This is a what.
Again, there have been reductions. We've had in the past where we've gotten when there's been a question whether there was actual physical contact that took place, which comes up over time, and we've convened somebody from the officials association, somebody from the coaches association, our staff member in charge of the activity, to sit down and say, okay, let's review all the information you have, video, accounts, written statements, etc., to figure out did something actually happen, and if so, how egregious was it? The reality is there shouldn't be any contact with officials. But again, in certain situations, there could be things that could take place. So that's where those things, and there have been reductions in some cases, but there's always been. Hasn't been reduced to zero.
How are you, the administrator on campus?
No, we had the administrators there.
Were they in the gym?
I'd have to go back and look at the film. They could have also been out in our commons area if there's things going on with kids at that time. We wind up covering, there's a lot of ground that folks are at during games. And so I'd have to go back and look at the games each year.
One last, Kyle and Peter. When you said $1,500 fine, that's what it says in the rule.
That's the standard penalty for physical contact by a coach with.
Okay.
So we start there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I'm just trying to listen. I'm trying to understand.
So we need some type of motion to either uphold it or adjust.
So my question, so Peter, the 500 was the forfeiture.
It was for the coach coming back in, outright and rejected. Right.
So
So
coach coming back in,
515
was for the contract.
correct.
I make a motion to reduce the fine from 1,500 to 1,000 because the coach did everything, the AD and the school did everything they could after the fact. Not to say that whatever the coach did was within what we expect, but I think it's done 15 to 1,000.
Okay, there's a motion.
Okay, discussion. I think it's really, again, I appreciate and I think this was handled extremely well by what the school district did. I do think that we have to continue to monitor this. We should have no contacts with officials. I'm gonna say that publicly. There should be no contact of any kind of kids or adults contacting officials. This is something we're trying to, we need each other in success of kids. And so I think that's really important that everybody understands that. Because this type of behavior is not okay. And that's the hard part of what we're trying to do as a board from that perspective. So I want to publicly say that because I think that we cannot do things, we cannot have sports and activities for students without those people officiating that. We're partners, whether people want to acknowledge that or not. And we have to continue to voice that. That's, again, I'm not opposed to that, but I want to be clear as a board member that we are going to continue to fine. That is part of the process. And publicly, I want everybody to understand that from my view, because I do have parts of the official pieces that I work with. It's a big part of what we do in support of kids.
And I'm asking for clarity, not for any fine reduction. I am trying to figure out when, when have we fined, how much have we fined, all those little things. But for definitely a fine, I would find if it's a full fine for me. I'm just trying to figure out where we land or where should I land. To me, sometimes I want full accountability and that's just that. So I'm not too worried about whether it's $500 less or 1,000. To me, it's really just understanding. And if we have done reductions, what were the cases and why did we do reductions in the past? Those are the little things for me. And like, I love accountability. I want people to be accountable. I want them to learn and grow. And sometimes we learn and grow the most and we're held to a high standard.
I would say that I don't necessarily think I support reducing the $1,500 fine. I do, however, feel like if it was a $2,000 collective because of what occurred coming back in and the fine 2,000, that we look at it together and say, can we reduce something as a result of that so that we maintain the message that you do not make contact with an official. So I can see if the whole thing was 2,000, reduce $500 in totality. In essence, I guess I'm wordsmithing or semantics about the 500 for re-entering, but I feel like you re-entered and got fired for re-entering. It's got basically what ended up happening. Or am I misunderstanding?
The volunteer was fired.
You volunteer. That's the other thing too. It's like in a whole nother bucket when a coach is told he's basically kicked out of a game and then he still comes back or she comes back, wherever it might be. But it would be hard for me on an HR side to just be okay with stuff like that. So it's just, there's a lot of things where I think of strong sanction or strong accountability for people when they make those types of mistakes.
Well, and I think for me, I appreciate what you did, in reaction to the situation in terms of, I would say probably handled appropriately. And in same thing with a paid coach, it would be handled appropriately as far as running it through your HR processes that. And I think maybe because that you took a proactive way in handling it, after the incident happened, that it could warrant a reduction in fine. I would, for all, not just Gresham, but all ADs, principals, superintendents to look at all of their processes with their coaches and proactively worked to disengage this type of activity. We've heard too many of these at the board level where that's have had physical contact with referees. And I'm afraid that it's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And so it would be my floor to all ADs to proactively teach, set expectations, notify, inform coaches prior to their season of what happens when they do. And if they do that, it's an automatic dismissal, given that if whatever their parameters they can do. And so I do appreciate your reaction to it, and for holding them accountable for their actions to it. I'd like to see a lot more, not just in your case, but across the state, folks get into a proactive mode instead of a reactive mode in dealing with these type of situations.
I want to commend you. I really like the way you said it. As you said, this is about being a role model for kids. And unfortunately, it takes money, sometimes a fine to really push our point. But what you said is actually the most important part, is whether or not you bump into official, if you're sitting on your bench screaming at the officials, that's not really what we want to do either as coaches, as parents, as anybody. And so I really appreciate that you are looking at this from just not a, hey, we don't want to get fined again, but a, hey, we're doing something other than just coaching a game here. We are teaching some skills, some life skills. So not just to you, to everybody, that's what we should be teaching. And we shouldn't have to get to the point where we have to reinforce the fines. We should just be teaching that there's an appropriate way to deal with discussions. So thank you for that.
Yeah, so I thank you for coming. I think that you were put in a very reactionary position, and it sounds like you did all the things that you could from year one to take action. And I echo what Jen says, just like zero tolerance for any type of contact with an official. It's kind of a hard no for me to no pass. Is there further discussion? Let's raise hands for this vote, because I think we might have some dissenters. Okay, I need just a second. Okay, so all those in favor of reducing from 1,500 to 1,000, please raise your hand.
Your hand raised, or sorry. Pat, is that your hand raised?
Yep.
I count 8.
Ready? Okay, there's 7 of us. All those opposed, raise your hand. I count 7. There we go. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So it passes with 8 votes.
And that's $1,000 fine.
$1,000. Yep.
Thank you, John. Good luck with this. So second mandatory appearance, so if you want to come on up, please ask him, you should be with me, but also mandatory appearance in front of you, non-appealing things, this soccer girl. Mandatory appearance in regard to a young wrestler, pro wrestler, female wrestler, Sophie Josh, 140 pounder, from bracket. This is the second day of the state tournament due to conflict. They elected to attend their mock trial scheduled for the same day, rather than being there for the second day of this wrestling state championship. So again, a withdrawal from state championships does not include injury, illness, or unforeseen event. So therefore, they're encouraging today as a mandatory appearance for that, not fulfilling their state championship requirement. So, Odie, go ahead.
I'm Odie Holland, I'm athletic director at Grant High School. I'm here with my head wrestling coach, Juan Pearson. We are here today because one of our wrestlers, Sophie Josh, won her first match. Won her first match, lost her second match on Friday. had a mock trial competition on Saturday. And unfortunately made the choice to attend that rather than show up. In discussions I've had with Lauren about the situation. I don't think we know if she would have won and been on Saturday if she would have made the choice. At Grant, we offer a lot of different things and we pride ourselves on that. And this is the first time where I've actually had this conflict of activities or things like mock trial or constitution team interject with athletics in a championship setting. So this is a first for me. I was actually unaware of the withdrawal rule. You know, I went to Cleveland and we have IB there and I'm in the PIL. And so I know there's driving schools and I know it spends up all the time with tennis and golf. So I was actually unaware that there was kind of situation.
I can add things, yes, so just for the record, Seth actually for today that. Thank you. So it was made, they told me after the girls district tournament, which was 1 week before the state tournament, that they had a conflict. They did not know that the state tournament was 2 days because our wrestling website software, because the state tournament was last day of February, first day of March. They went to the website and it said February 28th. They didn't think to go to March 1st. So they thought it was just on Friday. And they scheduled the mock trial, you know, months in advance, weeks in advance. And once they realized that the tournament was back to 2 days, they told me on Monday that they had this conflict. And I said, listen, you've got to make a choice. I obviously prefer you to wrestle both days. And I hope that you do make that choice. But they made it very clear to me that they had a mock trial team that was depending on them. So I honestly did not know until Saturday when the bus came, they were not going to participate in the second tournament. That was a decision that they made. I hope it was very difficult for them, but they did choose to go to the mock trial instead of tournament. And that was the choice they made. And that's all the information that I have.
Yeah, I will note, you know, I got the email Saturday morning from Warren. He put me on it. It was sent to Kelly, who was in charge of wrestling, notified. OSA was notified early that morning, which I thought was great, you know, again.
That was my request that we talked.
Oh,
I said
so-
you have to send me an email and tell me what happened.
Notification was made as soon as we knew, right, and, you know, they were on the bus. So again, this is a new one for me to move forward, getting an idea of understanding that withdrawal or without injury, you know, reason brings me here.
And I didn't, as a coach, I didn't know, I mean, I'm also a new man coach. I've been around coaching for a long time, but the fact that the athletes didn't make the championship because of something outside of injury or illness, I did not know there was a harsher penalty for that. So initially I told the officials of the meet that our staff was out, they were going to make it stay and asked why. I just generically said they were sick, they're out. And then when I was informed that there's a difference between being sick and having another reason, then I said, okay, no, wait, they're actually doing this. And then that's when Kelly said, well, then put me on email later. So that was, I guess, where I kind of altered in that initially just saying they're out to, oh, wait, they're out because, not because due to sickness or illness, but because they have. So.
Coach, can I have your name one more time?
My name is Warren McPherson.
Warren. And you, I guess what I heard you say is you were somewhat aware a week before that she might have a
Yes.
potential injury.
The Monday of the state tournaments. So directly after the district tournament, they came, they said that they had a conflict for Saturday.
And they were kind of starting to tell you, I don't know what I'm gonna do, I might choose this one, and.
Yes, they didn't really say what they were gonna choose. They just said, I have this conflict. And I said, well, this is the state tournament, you're a senior, this is your last chance to really do this. And I really thought that they were still going to choose to do the state tournament. There's only so much, you know, without being too overbearing, every day I'm saying to them, you're gonna be there on Saturday, you're gonna be there, you're gonna be there tomorrow, you're gonna be there, and in the bus, you know, they showed up for the bus
And Warren, real quick, and you and AD didn't talk before that?
I did not.
You weren't aware that?
I was made aware Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday morning.
I honestly didn't think to even include OD. I guess I was a little naive. I thought that the applicant would come. And it wouldn't even be an issue, but now I know to alert the AD as soon as there's a sort of. There is a possibility that this person might not.
Other questions?
Kelly, like, can I ask this question, because I cannot remember off the top of my head, like, does wrestling have similar to track and field the week prior, if there's any potential concerns that you can contact to say,
Yeah, it was sent out, yeah, the reminder is sent out. It's all sent out to the district director, so they get all that information on substitute deadlines, compare with all the teams that are gonna be participating. And then a reminder, once all the teams have made it into the state tournament, then on Sunday, once the brackets are posted, I send another email to all the school administrators and coaches, reminding them of the deadlines coming up that are within that week. And then that deadline is, I think, is Monday for wrestling, or Wednesday, yeah, so like.
Thank you.
Yeah. For some each.
No, we're not appealing it. That's just an for parents. We appreciate it. Being here.
Thank you, guys.
And Coach, I appreciate what you said there at the end about moving forward. Knowing that if something that we would be implied by a student of even a potential conflict, within that communication starts at that point. Everybody understands what's impacted.
I guess I'll just say to Odie that what I see here is there's an assumption that if the kid's gonna be in, that they're just gonna be in, right? Nice to the athletic director, the thought should be, here's the information all kids should know in advance, because we do it at state, I know we've got the conversation about state wrestling, but I'm about state track, but not about wrestling, but I think there's a piece where we just eliminate the assumption, you're sharing with the coach, if they understand that, to tell all the kids so they understand, you're committing to the whole big tournament, not to just the one.
All right.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Have a good day.
Appreciate it.
So did we want to share a file on the rest of these or bump back up?
Why don't we bump back up?
Okay. So we're on to transfer and eligibility test.
This was the fourth meeting of the transfer eligibility task force. The key piece for them really was to review the data that we received back from the delegate assembly and the OADA conference, in which there was proposals, or not proposals, but interest in getting feedback around what potentially other states have been doing. What we really heard from both of those groups was that this is an issue, transfers and their eligibility within the state is a major issue, but also they focused much more on a need or want for documentation than they did on creating any kind of change to our current structure. So with that being said, we spent a lot of time at the meeting talking about what kind of required documentation that we would want for both hardships and what I would deem regular transfers or eligible transfers. We talked about wanting required transcripts, potentially medical documentation. Anna Maria's suggestion of having a questionnaire around a student's affiliation or what they have been doing from a sports standpoint. Certainly written statements from the students, from the parents, from the schools. Those were all a part of the discussion. We also reviewed another state's rule, that was Michigan policy around limiting eligibility in the same sport for a calendar year. Some interesting discussion around that. But again, the other suggestions from other states that we brought forward to both the delegate assembly and the OADA were really not supported. When it came to talking about required documentation, that really led to a broader discussion about data collection. And that was also a very key piece that we discussed and wanted to certainly explore creating a centralized electronic system in which athletic directors would work. Member schools would still be responsible for evaluating a student's eligibility, but it would be a centralized hub for them to put in their required documentation, the increased required documentation, and we would be able to then track students throughout the state and potentially see where the movement is and if and where, major issues may be occurring. And again, hopefully assist those athletic directors throughout the state to evaluate eligibility more clearly. In addition to that, we had some discussion around our intent to transfer forms, putting those online as well and creating more of a centralized space for them to put the documentation. So that was, a major part of the discussion, moving a lot of this to be online, creating more expectation for required documents.
Yeah, it was a really good discussion, actually. I mean, again, I think honestly, as a staff, I think we were a little disappointed. We felt like some of the questions for actual rule changes we thought would maybe garner more support, and they didn't, which is fine. But the documentation piece I thought was interesting, especially as we talk about, every year 65 to 70 new athletic directors and them understanding what an eligible transfer is versus an ineligible transfer. The current system with basically just the one-page eligible student transfer certificate, leaves a little to be desired. So the idea of bumping that up, we thought would be twofold. Number one, it could help clarify which students are actually eligible or not, and support our new athletic directors with a more of a process that goes with that. In addition, the hardship requests even more documentation for those, so that district committees are able to make informed decisions with accurate information, maybe more so than we're able to do currently. So getting there with this group. When we knew it wasn't going to be a 2 meetings and we're done and we've solved transfers, but I think some plans in place short term with what Lauren talked about with the eligible student transfer certificate, the student intent to transfer certificate, and then the larger conversation of, again, some type of system that students, when they come in as a freshman participating at a school, they get entered into the system, and then they're in the system throughout their career, and we're able to see where that goes.
We talked about this a little bit in the work session. So the intent to transfer, does that get documented centrally anywhere, or that's just people can send out information if they want, it just happens in the district and that's it?
Yeah, currently right now it's the two schools signing off on it. So the intent to transfer is the parent, the student, the school they're leaving, and the school they are intending to transfer to. And what we've seen in the last couple of years is an increase in multiple intents to transfer. So I am looking to maybe do something different as a student for the following year. I know I'm going to a camp or a clinic this summer. There'll be coaches from multiple schools there. I don't want to jeopardize what I have, so I may go try and get 3 or 4 intent to transfer, so that way I'm covered. The discussion here was that there only be 1 to limit that, and that's where, again, having some type of electronic system that would be able to track that to be clearer. We would have a better idea here in the office of what's happening as well. I think one thing to Lauren's point, one thing that's come out of this is there's a real lack of actual data. There's a lot of thoughts, there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of innuendo, but actual data, other than for the actual hardship transfers, we really don't have it. So these would be ways to start to get.
But in that example, they would do it to multiple schools because then they would be covered as far as undue influence, because.
Well, again, not undue influence, just affiliation. You
Affiliate.
gotta keep those things separate.
Yeah.
Affiliation. But yes. Then
And
the
then-
thought is, if I'm really intending to transfer somewhere, I need to have 7 other ones in the back pocket.
And in addition, the increase in data provides us an opportunity to make data-driven decisions, whether it be around demographic information and the impacts of our rules on certain communities. And yeah, I think it would be a huge benefit for us.
And again, helps us look at just policy in general, moving forward.
Peter, I think that there's this, I guess, couple perceptions that I think that exist out there. One is, if I complain about the transfer stuff that's happening, no one's been thinking about it. So there's some people who just don't even bother because they think it's gonna happen. And then there's the clever people who go out and transfer over the summer, so it doesn't matter. They don't even gonna check, right? And then there's the sense of I can put whatever I want to put on paper and people just gotta believe it, like it's safety, right? Or well, safety. And I feel like at some juncture, as a entity, we have to say enough's enough, and I don't know where that is. But when I know the Tualatin team, the two best players were all ML20, they were all going together, and because the mom didn't get the head coaching job in Nelson, she took 3 of them to Tualatin. We know that occurred. We're not guessing, right? We also know that there's 4 or 5 other kids who are about to leave to go to Benson, right? And we know, and everybody else is looking at us going, you guys know you're not doing anything about it. Right? And I don't know what we can do, if it's just tighten up our systems and that is the response we can give. But I think that both directors are in these weird spaces of why even bother? It's okay to be a recipient, but it sucks to be the person that people are leaving, you know. But the principals I talk with and the ADs are all kind of in this weird space. And I think the committee's done a good job. I missed the last meeting, but I read through all the information. I read through all the information from the OADA and people's perceptions. I think they're all saying, can someone do something to stop this? And they're looking to us. And I don't know the answer, but I at least want to make sure we give them something that we are looking at. We are tightening this up, and you know, you guys are really the ones that can help us police to make this happen.
And I think, to be honest, Marshall, that's where we were disappointed as a staff, because we felt like a couple of things we put out there would do that, and the support wasn't there. So now we've kind of regrouped and coming back at the documentation side. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time talking about what ODE has listed as a hardship when students are transferring. You all have it on your district websites when a student's transferring. That if there's some type of allegation, for example, we hear a lot about, oh, my student was bullied or things like that. Well, there's no place for a student to be bullied, but it needs to be documented and those types of things. And if there's medical documentation, which we have students that need to transfer for those situations, that's fine, but then there ought to be documentation for that. So I think we're just trying to come at it from the avenues that we can, at least given the information that we've been getting back.
Well, I wonder, I go back to the conversation we were having about boys volleyball. And it's almost like if I ask my kid what their curfew is, it's gonna be whatever they want it to be. But if I say you gotta be in 11, that is what we're doing now. And I feel like people want a curfew. My daughter wanted a curfew. She said she did. But and when she broke it, she recognized she really wanted a curfew. But I feel like at least my sense is part of people want us to tell them. Because if we ask them, they don't want to be the bad person. They don't want to be the one that says, yeah, I said it was 50% of your season, like you're watching 40% of your season. Wow, that seems like a lot. I don't know. Well, you don't get the change if you don't add in a consequence. It's like you can't get what you want if you don't make a change. And it just seems like, to me, people wanting us to be the one who decide. But maybe I'm wrong.
It might be the other side of the coin in this part too, but what we're experiencing, I don't know if we tighten up transfer stuff and it could create a little bit bigger of an issue, where in district, we've tightened up transfer stuff between our two 4A schools. Now what we're seeing more and more is misrepresentation. So people are enrolling underneath somebody else's address. We're trying to verify those addresses as much as we can in terms of documentation bills, utility bills, and checks. And they're working to play in that system, and they're to a degree, they're outrunning us as what we can. So I don't know if it fits into the transfer committee or not, but probably stricter penalties in terms of misrepresentation for athletes that willingly deceive schools by address need to coincide and work parallel with the conversation of transfers.
So Lauren, the penalties that were floated were playing at the JV level, correct? But what if they're JV level? I mean, they probably aren't gonna transfer, but it also kind of makes the JV, like, makes that seem like a bad thing. I think that's part of it, but were there other, like, I know just out of Washington, they just put out, you know, there's, you can transfer one time. And then also you're out for a percentage of the season, like you can't play in a percentage of contact during the season. Are there, I guess I'm wondering, are there other thoughts about suggested penalties that are also being quoted?
So they just passed that a couple weeks ago in
Right.
Washington, and we tracked that. Again, when we talked to the committee, it seemed counterintuitive if we want to lock down transfers to say everybody gets a free one. So I think they struggled with that. So they were looking at again, I don't think they saw the sub varsity as a penalty. They saw it as a way to increase participation. And that maybe people wouldn't transfer as much if they knew they were only going to be able to play sub varsity, but they would still get to participate. That's why 30 states have that policy.
And I think part of it too, from the athletic director perspective, okay, maybe not as a penalty, but really you've got, it's like, sorry, the PE All-Star. You've got one kid that's like such at a different level. And what does that do to a contest? You know, really, okay, I'm saying you got an outside hitter that's gonna knock the ball into the ground. She's gonna take out half the other team if she's at the JV level. I mean, in other contests comparably, is that really a safe thing to do with the JV players by putting in a picture of that throwing? I mean, just kind of looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot with that group, not to belabor, but we've talked a lot with that group. The sentiment in the last 8 to 12 years in the state of Oregon with schools and school choice and options and homeschool and online school, all positive things for kids. Don't lead people to think that if I transfer, I'm not going to be eligible. They want that to come with it. And that's why we have the reciprocal rule intra-district, like Jamie was talking within their multiple high school districts. So like we say we want to shut it down and then we allow and sign off on reciprocal transfers. And so I think we're just trying to come at it maybe from a different perspective.
I'm just curious, Peter, should have asked this earlier, but it just came to me now. So I know there's a couple, or at least one going on right now, but how many times a year are you asked to investigate an undue influence? Or, I mean, how, as much of a problem that, I guess if people aren't reporting it, how big of a problem? I think it's a problem, but if people aren't reporting it, are they just some of the guys that it's open range anyway? I mean, how often is it actually getting reported to the USAA to investigate?
A few times a year. Again, we're talking about different things. So undue influence a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
Hey, this person recruited my student to come here. This school recruited this kid to leave my school and come to that school. Okay, where's the documentation? Where's the proof? Oh, they told me that they did. Well, that doesn't count. So where's the document? That's very difficult to prove.
Yeah.
Affiliation is a lot easier. I played for a coach or I got instruction for a coach from a coach. And then within that year I transferred. That's pretty cut and dry. That's why we put that rule into place. We don't necessarily get those reported to us. Sometimes we do. Those kids just aren't eligible. Yeah. So whether they come through the district committee hardship process or a school chooses not to take them to the district committee hardship process, that's up to the school.
But again, having a centralized system in which we would then be tracking all of these students, whether they are transferring eligibly or not. We could find trends, we could find where they're, you know.
And I think that's
25 people going to school.
first good step, right? When we talk about policy, sometimes it takes us time to change policy, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. And I think that gathering data, and even in the next year, I think will give us a little bit more guidance in that of, do we need to shift the policy or the the rules that we're currently standing by from that perspective. I think it's a good first, this is gonna be hard for the next couple of years, I think. We all know NIL and other things that are higher up than us are going to affect things at our levels, and I think having a first step of how do we collect that and then make choices on our policies related to that, because we're gonna hear, we'll hear if there's more. I think that will continue.
And potentially the number of, I maybe wouldn't say transfers, but hardships may decrease out of, you know, requiring a certain level of documentation. They may just stop.
Anything further? Treasure trove of fun. Moving on. Misty, Student Advisory Council. Yes, so we just sent out the applications. Our goal is to fill the spots that we have open from our graduating seniors by June, so that we would have our full SAC committee put together, or SAC put together, so that we could get those kids together in person. Those of you who heard me talk about this before, it was pretty painful. I know Melissa helped me this year. You get a group of kids that don't know each other on Zoom on Sunday evenings, it's crickets. We do all the talking, they listen. I let awkward silence go for 10 minutes at times, not really, but it felt like it. So our goal is that we would have this in place. We've already worked it out that we have confirmation from Camp Rylea with Army National Guards that we will go and take those kids for a 1 to 2 night overnight. And our plan would be that we would spend that time really getting to know each other, that we could build those friendships and bonds. When they get on Zoom, it's a lot more comfortable. So our goal is the application process will shut down on June 4th. We'll do the interviews, we'll have it dialed, we'll get that information out. And we are planning, that is the end of moratorium week, so they can't be on campus anyway. So that would be what they've confirmed and what dates we have to go on overnight. So super excited about that. I think it really will give us a good boost that we need to get some traction on that. And then our goal is to have them set the agendas for the year and for them to decide who's running it, who's keeping the minutes and doing all those things so that we can really do some more intentional leadership. And yeah, and that segues into the other update, the Playmakers Summit, which was formerly known as the Oregon Girls Sports Leadership Summit, went off on April 19th. We had close to 500 female student athletes and coaches in attendance. It was a phenomenal day. I know we had a few people in here. We had some support by some people in here. Thank you for the OAC and OADA, you know, giving us some money to help out with that. I would encourage all of you to go to the playmakersummit.com website. I really think it's great. It really shows what we're doing. And the photos all just got uploaded, so you can probably find some of your kids if they attended. So the playmakersummit.com, plus getting some movement on that page where we'll start using that to let you know what's happening for future events. But it was a phenomenal day. Cheryl Swoops flew in, and Chantel Trimetier, both D1 big time basketball players and professionals in their day. Then we also did a panel with some really phenomenal women. We had the sports psych trainer. She's a para-athlete, para-Olympian for the Thorns and the Timbers. She was in our panelists. We had a VP of pro women's soccer from Spokane that's also been at Adidas. We had a VP from Nike who's written a book. I mean, it was a knockout group of women. We had a dancer from the Blazers, just really a dynamic group. And then we also did in the afternoon, we did basically it was a career fair, but kind of, but not really. But our whole idea was to get 12 booths of women sponsored sports, women professionals in front of these girls so that they could spend time interacting. We had everything, and you could see all those lists on our website. I won't go into it, but it was really, really exciting to see, make those connections. You know, the OAOA, great shout out for them. They put a booth up to recruit officials. So again, they had all their, you know, bells and whistles and show kids how they can set up. And, you know, we had sports psych people and mental health people and, you know, the Department of Transportation, who's one of our sponsors there, talking about safe driving and how they can lower like all kinds of ways that kids could connect. So phenomenal day. You know, we hope to just keep growing and growing and making it bigger, but it was a great day. So,
Missy, this is on a Saturday.
yeah.
If we ever had a board meeting on a Sunday just after that, and we were able to attend, or I'll just take a line, that would be,
Tie it in.
yeah, that would add a strong element of compensation to it or support. I love that you're doing it, or that we're doing it, but I'd love to see it where we can integrate it, or at least we can almost be there. Just
Yeah. And I think too, I think you can kind of alluded to George, but shout out to Missy for all the work that she did. She's been doing this before she came to OSAA, but really has expanded it, and partnerships and working with people, and it's outstanding. It's just gonna keep growing. So Missy, thanks for what you're doing.
Thanks for the support.
Just FYI, we're thinking of tying our volleyball clinic into the Friday prior to it, so our volleyball coaches could do exactly what you were saying.
yeah, I'd like.
Right.
Okay, we're on the foundation.
Yeah, real quickly, our grant cycles are all finished up. We'll let the schools know who got their grants from the participation grant later today. One other thing that really is on our docket, as Peter mentioned earlier, for the SMAC conversation, is the need for automated external defibrillator AEDs. There's gonna be a lot around the state. So Chris and Rob do a great job of making connections to the Heller Foundation. So if you're in need for free AED, there's a link that you can fill out from them. We're also getting 25 AEDs from the National Federation at their foundation. We're paid half of it, so they're looking for a subsidized cost for $588. Those are coming later this month to our office. If you're interested in getting one, let me know. And then the foundation will get more next fall. So a lot of ways to get free or really reduced cost AEDs around the state. So let me know if you have any questions on that stuff along the way. But the OCA for the Heller as well as myself.
Okay, we're on to school violations, Kyle.
Yep, so the only one that the last Christmas is thinking is very talked about really this month on Zoom. Outside of that, that's already been taken care of. Outside of that, there's no other appeals, there's no other major appearances in front of you, so we're looking for just a general portion to.
Motion to accept the violations as presented.
Okay, discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Sorry. The next thing on the agenda is the passing of the gavel. Since this is our final meeting of the year. Misty's not wasting any time. Again, just want to take a moment to recognize Misty for the work that she's done this year. Been great getting a chance to work with her even more closely than in the past, and really appreciate her focus and desire to do what's best for kids, and always at the forefront of what she does. And so obviously we're glad that she's going to continue on the board, but we really enjoyed working with her this year as the president. And we also talked about earlier in the year, this summer she'll be going on the NFHS board of directors, which is exciting. We haven't had anybody from Oregon on the board of directors. Tom was on a few years ago, but before that it's been a while, so we're excited for that. So Misty, thank you for everything that you've done this year, and look forward to continuing with you. There you go. We got yourself for
Peter, as an outsider and also a committee member, I appreciate Misty's ability to be succinct and get right to an issue. And so I'm trying to learn.
Oh, thank you. Learn from you.
Good job.
Standard budget meeting.
So we will pass the gavel to Jen as the president for next year, and Jamie as the vice president. The last thing on the agenda, we have our board summer workshop in July. We talked about that this morning and getting that information. And then 7B in the packet is a list of the calendar meetings of the board and the delegate assembly for next year. The only change we're looking at is September 8th, starting that meeting at 9 a.m. because we'll tie a classification and districting meeting in the afternoon, which will necessitate having a meeting on Sunday afternoon 7. So we'll get all that information out to you. Other than that, it'll go as presented here.
Peter, can I ask a question? Inputting it into my computer, my dates, is the last summer workshop in 2026 the right date? If it's Monday through Wednesday, it should be the 20th through the 22nd.
It's probably the 20th through the 22nd. We'll double check that.
Yeah, just FYI.
Yep. We'll check that and send you an updated version with the 9 a.m. and you can make that change too. So. Anything else?
Oh, you're going out. Yeah, I'm going out. Our vote to adjourn.
So moved.
There we go. All right. See you in a little bit. Lunch.
Kelly, we're good.
Lunch.
Kelly, are we good?